The city of Knoxville has an important election coming up as we'll vote to choose the Knoxville mayor, city council representatives, and a municipal judge. Yes, this is the primaries because the general election is on November 7th, but Knoxvillians can vote today as an early primary voter because voting opened last week, but the official primary date is at the end of the month on August 29th. Now, Knoxville has an odd catch. If mayoral candidates or any of these other positions get 50% of the ballots cast plus one, the race is officially over and decided and doesn't even go to a general. That means that all of these positions like mayor could be decided this month. If none of the candidates get to that point, then the top two contenders go to the general election, and that's what voters can decide right now. I'm going to give you a breakdown of the candidates and give you my recommendations on who you should vote for as a Christ follower living in Knoxville. So, we'll begin with the city mayoral candidates. The incumbent mayor seeking her final term is India Kincannon, who is facing three challengers: Constance M. Every, R.C. Lawhorn, and Jeff Tallman. So first up, the incumbent mayor, India Kincannon. She raised taxes during her first term. Knox News reported Kincannon saying, "I proposed and pushed for a tax increase so we could pay our essential workers fair market wages so they wouldn't leave to other jobs and leave us high and dry without people to pick up our trash and pave our potholes and answer the call when people have emergencies." Under her leadership, the city pledged $50 million to affordable housing over the next 10 years, and she wants to do more. Specifically, she has a policy about missing middle housing, which is a push for duplexes and multiplexes, which she's trying to accomplish through an alteration of zoning and land use policies. The city is in the process also of upgrading all of the city buses to electric. Of course, this is on the public dime, but that shows you some of her climate positions. She feels she has stood up for love, as she says, in regard to the LGBTQ community. But there's one thing that has gotten her into some hot water. She hired a new police chief, Paul Noel, last year by contracting with a third-party company, which led to this outside hire from New Orleans. To many people in Knoxville and media outlets, this was kind of a shady process of hiring someone for a public office because Kincannon argued that using an outside search party exempted things from open records laws. There are literally current lawsuits over this issue, and you'll see what the other candidates think about it. Next is Constance Every. She may be a Knoxville native and has formerly served in the U.S. Army for 15 years, but Miss Every is the most liberal candidate on the list. She wants to emulate the Green New Deal in Knoxville, saying the Green New Deal is a forward approach to a blueprint for Tennessee to provide jobs and business development and fix failing infrastructure. Actually, it would kill jobs in business, which is the whole point. She somehow believes we're in our third year of the COVID pandemic, and that racism in the medicine and healthcare industries are a leading cause of health disparities. She supports defunding and reallocating funds for the police department and also removing militaristic gear from the department. She wants to legalize marijuana. She identifies as a lesbian. She supports bans on sales of military-grade firearms, and by that she means guns that look like military-grade firearms because no citizen has military-grade firearms. At least she didn't say assault weapons. She supports student loan forgiveness. In all caps on her website, she wrote, "No police in our schools. Replace with mental, social, clinical professionals and unarmed security contractors." She believes housing is a human right. She supports racial equity, which is different from equality. She wants to abolish ICE in Tennessee. She perpetuates this idea of white supremacy. She wants to amend the city's zoning policies to unbridle affordable housing. She wants to raise property taxes. And finally, she says, Knoxville needs to move away from its partnerships with organizations such as Salvation Army and CARM, to more grassroots groups like East Tennessee Harm Reduction. That organization was created just last year and only connects you to other organizations which would charge for patient use. So probably not a great option for the homeless. But anyways, our next candidate is R.C. Lawhorn, a local businessman who supports zero lot line housing. That's cramming as many living spaces onto a lot space as possible, like literally up to the property line. He wants to keep the trolley buses that we have and build a new bus station. He thinks we should hold off on buying electric buses until costs come down. In treating the homeless problem, Lawhorn said just one location is needed and that more affordable housing, including tiny houses, would help. Lawhorn says the city needs a better understanding of the LGBTQ community and a respect for people's rights. Are Knoxvillians misunderstanding LGBTQ people? How are their rights being disrespected? Who knows? He wants a forensic audit on the city's budget, tax breaks for larger businesses and developers, lower property taxes, and equitable schools. There's that word again, equitable. Lawhorn wants housing developers to build smaller, denser apartments, duplexes, and multiplexes. As far as the police department goes, he wants locals to occupy those positions. Then last and most certainly not least is Jeff Tallman. Mr. Tallman is a former mortgage banker in Knoxville who is running for mayor because he doesn't like the direction of the country or the city. He's focused on unity, safety, and prosperity. He's tired of what he calls the manufactured outrage. For example, he says, don't focus on problems, seize opportunities. Like on the subject of affordable housing, he wants to redevelop unused city properties. That is seizing an opportunity. He wants to keep Knoxville from becoming like other progressive cities, which is the complete opposite vision of Miss Every. He wants to lower taxes. He believes that addressing violence in the city must be proactive instead of reactive. All of the other candidates have reactive solutions. He wants to take proactive, preventative measures like working with families, reaching young people, and building trust between communities and police. He doesn't have a huge problem with Kincannon's handling of the police chief hire, but his point is basically like, what's the big secret? I particularly love how he describes a future Knoxville as a city that inspires the world. It's a world leader. But finally, Tallman offers probably the most coherent position on homelessness. He says there's a variety of circumstances. There are people who are in a pinch because they got behind financially. And then on the far end of the spectrum, you've got people who I think choose homelessness. They choose the street. He also said it's a little unrealistic to think these people are just an available house away from being a great candidate to being homeowners. He added, there is, of course, a need for psychiatric facilities to treat those with mental health issues. But those are your four candidates. It's unbelievable when you consider the stark contrast between the four, as they're like 4 points on a political spectrum. You've got Miss Every as far left as they come in America, then Mayor Kincannon, then businessman Lawhorn, and then Jeff Tallman on the right. It should be pretty obvious who I endorse for mayor, but if I had to guess, I would say Knoxville isn't quite liberal or woke enough for Miss Every. Kincannon hasn't done a terrible job, and Lawhorn just isn't exciting enough. So I would say the primaries will send Kincannon and Tallman to the general in November. But because of the rules, I would implore you to go this week to vote for Jeff Tallman, who is obviously the most conservative option, although I would like somebody that's even more conservative than him. Moving on City Council seat A, Darren Worsham is a 50-year-old welder with experience in construction, auto repair, and trucking. He is the best option with the best views over incumbent Lynn Fugate. For seat B, R. Bentley Marlowe is the best option, and there's no incumbent in that race. And then for seat C, I think Tim Hill is a strong choice, although the incumbent member, Amelia Parker, is a good second choice. As far as the municipal judge position, Judge Rawson has this in the bag. He's been on the bench for 36 years. I've been in his courtroom, and I think he's a good judge. So if you live within the city limits, go vote today. You probably need some roof repairs. If you feel that water dripping every time it rains, or those shingles are starting to look bad, trust me, the sooner you act, the better. So call my friends over at Turner Exteriors for an estimate on your roof today. If you tell them Blake sent you, they'll give you $500 off your new roof. $500. I know the guys and gals over at Turner Exteriors. They do great work. You will love the new life they bring to your home. Before we get to your comments, I've got one more news story about Tennessee license plates. The new blue and white plates, which were introduced a couple years ago following the green plate series, they come in two basic forms. One is a standard license plate, but the other option includes the phrase, "In God We Trust." Now, apparently this idea was introduced back in the green plate series, and Knox News is reporting that there's almost 8% more "In God We Trust" plates driving around the state since last year. Growth is good news, right? Well, of course it's good to hear that more drivers are sporting those plates and that phrase. But the bad news is that just over 29% of Knox County vehicles have those tags. Just over 29%. Here are the actual numbers in Knox County. In 2022, there were 104,720 "In God We Trust" license plates, but 251,537 plates without. The Tennessean also reported on this subject, and they even ranked which counties in Tennessee had the least and most "In God We Trust" license plates. Benton County in western Tennessee, 97% of its license plates are "In God We Trust," while Fentress, Overton, and Van Buren counties are all at 96% in Middle Eastern Tennessee. Now, which counties have the fewest percentage of "In God We Trust" plates? You can probably guess which ones, but here they are. The top five, or the bottom five, depending on which way you look at it. Washington County is at 44%. Shelby County, which is where Memphis is at 31%. Then Knox County has the third fewest at 29%. Bedford County in Middle Tennessee has 27%. And then, of course, Davidson County, where we have Nashville and our state capital, has the fewest "In God We Trust" license plates at 21%. Now, some people said they weren't even given a choice when they renewed, but when my wife and I renewed our plates, it was simply a box you had to check. Honestly, I feel like if it was important enough to people, they would see to it that their license plate said "In God We Trust." But I bring up the story because I think it's indicative of the condition of the church. As Christians continue to live lives that are identical to non-Christians, what motivation would the secular culture have to follow Jesus? It's another sign of the prolonged failure of the church to properly disciple and evangelize. But thanks to places like Benton and Fentress and Overton counties, Tennessee isn't a bad place to live.